The relentless sun beat down on Ethan Miller's ranch, a desolate stretch of land where the very dust seemed to mock his fading hopes. Maverick, his prized horse and the last tangible link to a better past, lay prone in the stable, his labored breaths echoing the rancher's own despair. Ethan, a man weathered by the harsh realities of the Old West, ran a calloused hand over the horse's feverish flank, a silent plea escaping his lips. He'd tried everything, every remedy known, every whispered prayer, but Maverick only grew weaker, his once vibrant coat dulled by the creeping sickness. The loss of his family had already carved deep canyons in Ethan's soul. Losing Maverick would be the final, crushing blow, leaving him truly alone in this unforgiving wilderness. The ranch, once a beacon of his dreams, now felt like a tomb, its silence amplifying his gnawing dread. Harmony Creek, a small cluster of clapboard buildings miles from Ethan's isolated ranch, was no stranger to hardship, but its struggles often manifested in whispers and suspicion. It was there, amidst the dusty streets and wary glances, that the name Clara was whispered, with a mix of fear and disdain. Labeled cursed since childhood, she was a pariah, blamed for every misfortune that befell the community. Ethan, a man of logic and skepticism, scoffed at such superstitions. Yet as he rode into town on a desperate errand, a flicker of something, perhaps desperation, perhaps a strange intuition, drew his gaze to the slight figure of Clara, huddled under the watchful, judgmental eyes of her distant guardians. There was an innocence in her worn clothes, a quiet resilience in her downcast eyes that stirred something within him, a stark contrast to the hardened faces of the townsfolk. The transaction was brief, almost transactional, yet it felt monumental. Ethan, driven by a logic he couldn't quite articulate, bought Clara. He paid her guardians, who seemed eager to be rid of her, a sum he could barely spare. He didn't know why he did it, only that the thought of leaving her to endure another moment of their disdain was unbearable. As she silently gathered her meager belongings, the unspoken weight of her ostracism hung heavy in the air. He wasn't seeking a miracle, nor was he expecting companionship. He was simply a desperate man, reaching for any thread of hope, however thin or improbable, to pull him back from the brink of absolute solitude. He saw a flicker of humanity in her, a vulnerability that resonated with his own hidden pains. The journey back to the ranch was a silent one, punctuated only by the creak of the wagon wheels and the rhythmic thud of their horses' hooves on the dry earth. The vast, empty landscape stretched before them, a reflection of the emotional chasm between them. Ethan, burdened by his own grief and the impending loss of Maverick, was lost in thought, his mind a whirlwind of doubts and questions. Clara, silent and watchful, absorbed the arid beauty of the land, her gaze often falling on Ethan, a stranger who had, for reasons unknown, offered her a refuge. The air was thick with unspoken stories, of past heartbreaks and uncertain futures as they journeyed towards a destiny neither of them could foresee. The silence of the Miller Ranch, once a heavy shroud, began to subtly shift with Clara's arrival. She moved with a quiet efficiency, her presence a soft counterpoint to Ethan's gruff solitude. He watched her from a distance, a mixture of curiosity and apprehension swirling within him. She rarely spoke, but her actions spoke volumes. She cleaned, organized, and quietly began tending to the small garden, her hands, once seemingly cursed, now coaxing life from the dry earth. Ethan, though still consumed by Maverick's worsening condition, found himself less burdened by the oppressive quiet, a flicker of something akin to peace settling over the ranch for the first time in years. The air, once heavy with his despair, now held a faint promise of something new. Clara's gaze, often drawn to the stables, settled on Maverick with a profound gentleness that surprised Ethan. She approached the ailing horse with a quiet confidence. her movements unhurried and calm. As she began to tend to him, her hands, so often seen as instruments of misfortune by the townsfolk, became instruments of soothing. She cleaned his stall with meticulous care, offered him water with a patient hand, and stroked his fevered brow with a touch so light it seemed to carry a silent understanding. Ethan observed her, a knot of skepticism tightening in his gut. Yet he couldn't deny the undeniable solace Maverick seemed to find in her presence. The horse, usually agitated and restless, grew calm under her ministrations, a silent testament to an unspoken connection. Days turned into a week, and then another. Ethan, caught between hope and cynicism, continued his vigilant watch. The community of Harmony Creek, meanwhile, had begun to hear whispers of the cursed girl at the Miller Ranch, her name now tinged with a new, unsettling curiosity. Some dismissed it as foolishness, others murmured about black magic, but a few, desperate for relief from their own ailments, felt a hesitant spark of hope. The initial skepticism surrounding Clara was slowly giving way to a grudging curiosity, a fragile shift in the town's perception. The very air seemed to hum with anticipation, waiting to see what this unusual arrangement would yield. Then, one morning, a faint whinny echoed from the stable, a sound Ethan hadn't heard in weeks. He rushed in, his heart pounding, and saw Maverick, not yet fully recovered, but standing on his own, a spark of life returning to his eyes. Clara stood beside him, her face serene, a small, knowing smile playing on her lips. Ethan felt a wave of disbelief, followed by an overwhelming surge of relief. It wasn't a miracle, not in the way he understood them, but it was undeniably real. The horse was healing, slowly but surely, and the only variable was Clara. His rational mind struggled to comprehend it, but his heart, long hardened by loss, felt a fragile stir of hope he hadn't dared to entertain. The news of Maverick's recovery spread through Harmony Creek like wildfire, morphing with each retelling. The cursed girl had healed the dying horse, transforming her from an outcast to an enigma, a figure of both fascination and fear. Suddenly, the whispers weren't just of misfortune, but of a strange, inexplicable power. People began to venture to the Miller Ranch, some driven by genuine curiosity, others by a desperate need for healing, their eyes wide with a mixture of hope and apprehension. Ethan, initially overwhelmed by the sudden influx of attention, found himself defending Clara from both the superstitious awe and the ingrained prejudice of the townsfolk. He saw her not as a mystical healer, but as a compassionate young woman with an undeniable gift for understanding and tending to living things. Clara, thrust into the reluctant spotlight, struggled with the newfound attention. Her quiet nature yearned for the solitude she'd found at the ranch, yet her innate kindness compelled her to help those who sought her out. She tended to ailing animals and even offered simple remedies for human ailments, always with the same gentle touch and intuitive understanding. She never claimed to possess magical powers, explaining her methods as common sense and a deep connection to nature. Still, the townsfolk, accustomed to their ingrained superstitions, interpreted her actions through their own lens of wonder and belief, attributing miraculous qualities to her touch. She found herself navigating a precarious balance between their expectations and her own quiet desire for normalcy. Ethan, witnessing Clara's unwavering patience and genuine empathy, found his own skepticism slowly eroding. He saw the tangible results of her actions, the undeniable improvement in the lives of those she touched, both human and animal. His initial scientific, logical mind wrestled with the observable reality, forcing him to confront the limitations of his own understanding. He began to see that what the town called a curse, or now a miracle, was simply a profound connection, a heightened sensitivity to the natural world. This realization was a slow, sometimes painful process. challenging his ingrained beliefs and forcing him to reconsider everything he thought he knew about the world and the people in it. The challenges, however, were not solely external. Ethan still grappled with the deep wounds of his past, his grief a constant companion. Clara, with her quiet strength and gentle presence, became an unexpected balm to his wounded soul. Their conversations, initially hesitant and brief, grew longer, more comfortable, as they shared stories and fears. He began to confide in her, something he hadn't done with anyone in years. Her empathy, devoid of judgment, created a safe space for him to confront his own emotional scars. Through their shared experiences, a bond began to form between them, built on mutual respect and a growing understanding, a silent promise of healing for both their lives. As Clara's reputation as a healer grew, so too did the undercurrent of unease in Harmony Creek. The initial awe began to curdle into suspicion, fueled by those who clung to their old beliefs, unwilling to let go of the idea of her as cursed. Whispers of witchcraft and dark pacts resurfaced, fueled by fear of the unknown and the discomfort of a world that didn't fit their rigid understanding. A new conflict arose, not just from the tangible ailments she addressed, but from the deeply ingrained prejudice and superstition of the community. Ethan, now firmly in Clara's corner, found himself increasingly at odds with some of the town's more vocal traditionalists, their arguments often erupting into tense confrontations. He understood that to truly help Clara, he needed to dismantle the very foundations of these harmful beliefs. Determined to protect Clara and clear her name, Ethan began to meticulously investigate the past tragedies that had branded her cursed. He spoke to old-timers, consulted faded church records, and pieced together fragmented memories. What he uncovered was not a series of supernatural events, but a string of unfortunate accidents, coincidences, and misinterpretations amplified by fear and ignorance. A lightning strike that burned a barn, a sudden illness that claimed a life, a failed harvest, all had been unfairly attributed to Clara's presence, the desperate need for a scapegoat outweighing any logical explanation. He saw how easily panic and a lack of understanding could twist perception, turning an innocent child into a symbol of misfortune. Ethan, now armed with the truth, confronted the town elders, presenting his findings with a quiet determination. He painstakingly explained the natural causes behind each curse, demonstrating how simple errors in judgment or unforeseen environmental factors had led to the misfortunes. He presented logical explanations for the healing as well, emphasizing Clara's knowledge of herbs, her gentle touch, and her profound understanding of animal behavior rather than any magical abilities. It was a slow, arduous process, chipping away at years of ingrained superstition, but a few open-minded individuals began to listen, their skepticism giving way to a grudging acceptance. The truth, though sometimes unwelcome, had a way of slowly, inexorably revealing itself. Clara, though still reserved, found a quiet strength in Ethan's unwavering support. His belief in her, his tireless efforts to clear her name, resonated deeply within her. She realized that the true healing wasn't just about mending physical wounds, but about mending the torn fabric of human connection, about overcoming prejudice and finding acceptance. Together, they slowly started to bridge the gap between Harmony Creek's ingrained fears and the reality of Clara's gentle nature and genuine abilities. The struggle was far from over, but the first cracks in the wall of ignorance had appeared, signaling a shift in the prevailing winds of suspicion and misunderstanding. The turning point came with a crisis that threatened to engulf Harmony Creek. A virulent illness swept through the livestock, decimating herds and threatening the very livelihood of the ranchers. Panic gripped the town, and traditional remedies failed. In their desperation, some cautiously, others openly turned to Clara. Despite the lingering whispers of her past, the immediate threat outweighed their prejudices. Clara, without hesitation, worked tirelessly, her deep knowledge of local flora and her intuitive understanding of animal needs proving invaluable. She prepared poultices, administered herbal concoctions, and guided the ranchers in proper care, her quiet determination shining through the chaos. Ethan, by her side, coordinated efforts, lending his practical skills and unwavering support, a beacon of calm amidst the escalating fear. The collective experience of battling the epidemic together forged an unexpected unity within the community. As the sick animals slowly recovered, a profound shift occurred in the hearts and minds of the townsfolk. They witnessed Clara's dedication, her knowledge, and her genuine compassion firsthand. The cursed girl was no longer a symbol of fear, but a beacon of hope, her actions speaking louder than any rumor. The old superstitions began to crumble, replaced by a grudging respect, then genuine admiration. The shared struggle had stripped away the layers of prejudice, revealing the true character of those involved. In the aftermath of the crisis, Harmony Creek was forever changed. The animosity towards Clara dissipated, replaced by a quiet gratitude and a newfound appreciation for her unique gifts. She was no longer just the healer, but a respected member of the community, her past defined not by fabricated curses, but by the tangible good she had brought. Ethan, seeing the transformation in Clara and the acceptance she finally received, felt a peace he hadn't known in years. His ranch, once a solitary bastion of grief, now buzzed with the quiet hum of renewed life, and his heart, once hardened, was softened by companionship and the shared triumph over adversity. The dust of despair had finally settled, revealing the vibrant hues of hope. The bond between Ethan and Clara deepened into a quiet, profound partnership. He had given her a home and a chance at acceptance, and she had, in turn, healed not just his horse, but the deepest wounds of his own heart. They stood together on the vast, open plains, a testament to resilience, understanding, and the power of human connection. The story of the cursed girl who healed the dying horse, once a tale of superstition, became a legend of compassion and the unwavering strength of the human spirit, passed down through generations in Harmony Creek, a reminder that true miracles are often found not in the mystical, but in the quiet, extraordinary power of empathy and the unyielding pursuit of truth.